Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is the 18th part of What If Deku Had a Robot Wolf. I hope you enjoy. Link to the original story and author in the description. Chapter 18, One for All Part 2. So, you're the ninth. Izumi's eyes shot wide open as her mind raced. She quickly realized that One for All was active and flowing throughout her body. It took all of her willpower to avoid accidentally using it, as she did not want to accidentally harm her friends around her. Once she was sure she had her quirk under control, she looked around and checked on the others. Achiko, Tsuyu and Himiko were still fast asleep, which was good, as she wouldn't want to wake them up. Durandal on the other hand had noticed and had gotten up to check on her. "You okay?" he asked quietly, speaking quietly so as to not wake the other. "No, but can't talk about it now," Izumi replied quietly, quirks playing up. Durandal nodded before he returned to standby mode. They couldn't risk talking about One for All now, not when there were others in the room, so they would save it for later. And probably bring it up with All Might. Once Durandal had stood down, Izumi laid back and recalled what she saw after she was rescued by that angel. That dark void was cold and horrifying, but she wasn't the only one there. There were others with her. Beside her stood a line of 7 people. The closest was a man glowing yellow. He looked like All Might but was also on fire. The others had looked more solid. Beside him stood a tall woman with a curvaceous and well-built figure, straight, kept shoulder-length hair, and wore a sleeveless bodysuit, elbow-length gloves, and knee-high boots. She also glowed magenta, which made identifying her hair and clothing colors. Next to her was a man with dark hair who wore a high-collared jacket. He glowed purple. Next was a large muscular man with a wide build wearing leather clothes, goggles, and a bandolier. He glowed orange. The next person was a lean man with short hair that was parted away from the base of his forehead, with 2 scar-like cracks stretching from the left side of his forehead down to his chin. He glowed violet. She couldn't see the person who stood after the guy she dubbed the homeless one, only a dark red glowing black mass, but there was someone standing beside it. Another man was dressed more like a soldier with an odd-looking pair of gauntlets on his arms. He had short spiky hair and a large scar across the front of his face. He glowed blue. They did not look at her, not even sending a side glance her way. Their attention was focused on something else, a series of scenes performed by 2 men, although she had the feeling that these were memories of sorts. The first was a young man who looked sickly and malnourished. He did not glow, so she could tell that he had white, messy hair that covered his eyes. The other man, however, sent a chill down Izumi's spine. He was a man with a towering stature, a powerfully muscular physique, imposing features, short white hair, and luminous red eyes. Just seeing this man filled her with dread. The 2 men seemed to be talking to each other, but she didn't hear most of what they were saying because of how terrified she was. But she remembered what they did, and she was horrified. One of the scenes depicted the towering man standing in front of 2 men, one with a quirk, the other, quirkless. He then did something that she thought impossible. He put his hands onto the men's foreheads and took the quirk man's quirk, and gave the quirkless man a quirk. This chilled her to the bone. This man had a quirk that allowed him to give and take quirks. The very existence of this power shook her worldview. If this power existed, then what other horrifying quirks existed out there in the dark? The next scene depicted the 2 men talking again, ending with the second man forcing a quirk upon the first. She didn't hear much of what they said, but even then, she knew what was happening. She knew what she was seeing. This was the birth of One for All. She had watched the first user receive the quirk, and the others with her were the other past users. But how was the first user able to transfer the quirk he was given, unless he already had a quirk that allowed him to transfer his quirk to someone else? It would explain how One for All could be transferred. It was a combination of 2 different quirks. A stockpiling quirk and a transfer quirk. Transferred from person to person, growing with strength with each holder. 8 past users, and she was the 9th. The 9th holder of One for All. Wait, didn't her given name have a kanji that is homophonic to 9? Oh shit, it did. What an odd coincidence. She would need to tell All Might about this. And maybe a slap to the face for not warning her about this. Seriously, after what happened today, some warning that you'll be transported to a black abyss to witness the birth of one for all would have been helpful. Well, it's not like he knew this was going to happen. Also, it's Hermit. Izumi looked around for the source of the voice. That was the second time today that it happened. Was she hearing voices now? She sighed before she closed her eyes and went back to sleep. She could deal with this tomorrow, she had Snuggles to get back to. Izumi! Was all the warning Izumi got when she walked downstairs in the morning before she was suddenly hugged tightly by her mother, the famous Midoriya waterwork on full display. Mom? Was all Izumi was able to squeak out before she was smothered by her mother's tight embrace. What was she doing on campus? She hadn't immediately gone down for breakfast when her alarm went off, staying in bed with Achiko, Tsuyu and Himiko till around 10. Achiko took a bit more convincing to get up, due to, as she put it, world outside cold and cruel, bed warm and Snuggles comfy. She had to be practically dragged out of bed and forced off of Izumi with a crowbar. She was almost like a koala in a way. Tsuyu needed some time to prepare as well because, after yesterday's events, she wanted to make sure no one saw her green veins. Thankfully, Momo was able to make her some makeup to use to cover them up. This brings them back to now, with all of Izumi's classmates watching her get smothered by her own mother. The parents of a few of them were also there. Izumi! I was so worried about you. Inko cried as she hugged her daughter, holding onto her like a lifeline. It took Izumi a few moments to recover from her mother's sudden and tight hug. She wanted to ask her mother why she was here, tell her that she was fine, but the words never came. Instead, tears started to form around her eyes before she returned her mother's hug. She was just glad that her mother was here, glad that she was worried about her. She didn't enjoy what happened yesterday, watching people get murdered right in front of her and being powerless to stop it. She wanted to be strong enough to be able to stop such atrocities, to be able to save everyone. But at the moment she wasn't ready for that, none of them was. But she will get stronger, next time she will be ready. Until then, she was content to stand there in the comforting embrace of her mother. Mother. I got the buckets. Durandal said as he rushed over carrying 2 buckets with his tail, only to notice both Midoriyas were crying their eyes out. Oh god damn it, now they're both doing it. After the Midoriya waterworks were fixed, things started to settle down a bit. The students spent most of the morning with their parents, with Himiko and Hitoshi with one of the care workers at the care home they stayed at. After what happened, they needed their families now more than ever. It also gave the parents a chance to meet each other and have a chat. Had things been different, the students would have been embarrassed by this. But at the moment, the last thing they needed was parental embarrassment, and their parents knew that. So they kept discussions light. Cementas had come around about midday and informed everyone that they will be allowed to visit their classmates in the hospital. This came to much relief for the students, as they wanted to see how their friends and classmates were doing after yesterday's attack. A few hours later, the students boarded the bus for the hospital, with May coming along as well to visit her parents. Due to the break-in, the bus that took them there was under heavy guard. It felt weird for a bus carrying Hero Course students to be escorted by several JSDF assault hounds, one-man armored all-terrain assault vehicles with twin Gatling guns. Normally the military wouldn't do this, but with the threat of one of Paxton's old minions, his deadliest one at that, looming over them, no one was taking any chances. May had asked one of the soldiers on the bus with them, a lieutenant by the name of Yuji Itami, if she could have a look at the inner workings of one of the assault hounds. She was, politely, told no. Upon arriving at the hospital, the students were escorted to the Hero Wing, a special wing designated for treating heroes and Hero Course students. It was also the most secure wing of the hospital. Doubly so now that there were heroes actively patrolling the wing. When they arrived at the wing their classmates were in, they immediately went over to talk to their friends. Most of the students' injuries were rather light. Broken bones or deep cuts caused by the striders. But Denki was the worst off. His eye was sliced out and there was no way it could be repaired. He would have to have it replaced with a prosthetic. He was the one the class was most worried about, having been injured the worst during the attack, bearing the teachers. Speaking of the teachers, they were not permitted to visit them since they were in intensive care. Snipe had his entire rib cage broken as well as damage to his spine, and Kana had her entire right arm crushed. Neither of them was in a state to talk to anyone at the moment, with only Mei permitted to visit them. There were only two people Izumi wanted to talk to whilst she was here. One of them flashed her a friendly smile as she and Hitoshi walked over to him. "Hey, nice to see you two managed to get out of that relatively unharmed," Nito said with a smile as the two walked over to him. "Relatively is an understatement," Hitoshi said, looking more tired than usual. "Physically we're fine. Mentally we're fucked. I didn't expect to see a robot dash about and kill a large number of people around me on my 4th day of UA. I don't think any of us did, really. I didn't exactly have the best night, and I wouldn't be surprised if tonight is the same. I'm going to be having nightmares about this for weeks. I fear you all will." Durandal said, "What you saw yesterday was a glimpse of the true scale of destruction Paxton brought upon the world 11 years ago. You're lucky you only had to deal with those robots and they were old. You would not have survived fighting Argonaut. Trust me, we know," Nito said with a frown. "When we heard that Argonaut was there, most of us had a panic attack. We've all heard of him, but who hasn't? That man's killed top 10 heroes from across the globe. Zeus, Cavalier, Florida Man, Maple and so many, many more. Honestly, I know losing 13 hurts, but I'm glad she's the only one he managed to kill. He could have butchered us all bearing All Might." "I'm not sure about that," Izumi said with a frown. "That monster the League brought with them, Nomu. I overheard their leader talking about him. He said it was made to kill All Might. It took a Detroit smash and brushed it off like it was nothing. It wasn't even phased." Both Hitoshi and Nito stared at her with wide eyes. They weren't told much about this Nomu the League brought with them, but if it was able to go up against All Might and showed signs of being able to win, then it must have been truly terrifying. "Well, I'm glad those two groups were enemies. I dread to think what they could do as allies," Hitoshi said, looking a lot more freaked out now. "Let's hope they never do," Izumi said, quickly changing the subject. "So, how's the rest of the class doing?" "They're fine, mostly," Nito replied. "We should all be back by Sunday. They had a therapist come in earlier to help us. They went over what we saw at the USJ and will be helping us out over the coming months. They'll be helping out the entire class. You'll probably see them tomorrow." That was good to know. Hound Dog was good, but he wasn't skilled enough to handle the mental trauma of so many students, especially when it was caused by an event as bloody as the USJ. So professional help would be appreciated. "Well, I'm just glad you're all okay," Momo said as she walked over, a small smile on her face. "Momo," Hitoshi said, "what are you up to?" "I'm just going around checking to see if everyone's alright after yesterday," Momo replied. "I've already checked Denki, Hanta and Kyoka, they're recovering nicely." "But she said before she frowned, a look of shame on her face. "Are you alright?" Izumi asked, sounding worried. "It's just that. I feel like I had an unfair advantage," Momo said with a frown. "I took a lot more hits from that Strider we fought, but ended up with only light cuts. My nanocore protected me. But, I came out of that zone in far better condition than the others who were there. None of you have one, and Ijiro can only harden his skin thanks to his quirk, and even he got injured badly during the attack," she said, looking to be on the verge of crying. "I had an implant that protected me, and I only have it because of my family's wealth and status. I can't help but feel that I have an unfair advantage over you all. I only got a nano core on a whim, not thinking much about it apart from it being useful for hero work. I didn't realize how rare they were, especially outside of Germany. I thought everyone would have one. But, you didn't. I should have done more to help everyone else." Momo, Izumi said, giving Momo a comforting smile. "Don't feel bad about having a slight advantage over us. We all have skills, abilities and equipment that make us better at something than everyone else. Don't be disheartened by thinking ahead. Tell me, how many times did the robot hit you?" Momo looked confused for a few moments before she replied, "The Strider slashed at me 27 times. Good. That means whilst it was wasting its time attacking you, it wasn't attacking anyone else," Izumi said. "Others got hurt badly, yes, but thanks to you tanking those attacks the robot was preoccupied and couldn't kill them. It was the same with Ijiro, Nito added. I was sent to the ruins zone alongside Toru. And despite his skin not being as hard as your nanocore, he still took the brunt of the robot's attack, giving us time to kill it. He brought us time we wouldn't have had otherwise, and so did you. Don't feel ashamed about acting like a human shield, because thanks to actions like that, we all got out of there alive. Momo looked at them with teary eyes. She expected them to be mad at her for this, but they weren't. In fact, they were supportive of her, even with her unfair advantage. Thank you, she said with a smile before she leapt forwards and hugged Izumi, much to the shorter girl's surprise. Izumi was unsure of how to proceed with this sudden hug from Momo, apart from the feeling of two large soft things pressing just below her head. So, with a slight blush on her head, she cautiously returned the hug. Momo hugged her for a few moments before breaking off. I'm going to go check on the others real quick. I'll talk to you later, she said before she walked over to Mina. Nito wasn't the only one Izumi wanted to see. There was one other. Her mentor, All Might. It took a bit of convincing to be allowed to see the man, but, after around 10 or so minutes, she was able to enter his room. The number one hero laid back in his bed, in his skinny form and covered in bandages. He flashed her a friendly smile as she and Durandal walked in. Izumi. It's nice to see you again. Hey All Might, Izumi said as she walked over to him and sat on the bed. How are you doing? Fine, mostly, All Might replied, but that Nomo messed me up, badly. Ripped open my old wound. I'm down to 1.5 hours now. What? Izumi gasped. All Might lost 1.5 hours of his time just fighting Nomu. That's. Is there anything that can be done to help you? She asked, terrified of the idea that All Might would have to retire early. She wasn't ready to replace him yet. All Might shook his head and frowned. I'm afraid not. But don't worry about it, Izumi. Even if I had kept One for All, the end result wouldn't have changed. I'm already on borrowed time as the symbol of peace. It would have been a miracle if I could still perform hero work by the time you graduate UA. Tears started to form around Izumi's eyes. But I'm not ready yet. How can I become the next symbol of peace when I'm not even out of UA? I don't want you to become the next symbol of peace, All Might said with a slight smile. I set too much of a bar that no one could ever hope to surpass. No, I want you to become a different symbol, a beacon to light the darkness caused by my retirement. I want you to become a symbol of hope. Izumi looked up at All Might. A symbol of hope? She said, wiping the tears from her eyes. All Might nodded. There will be much chaos once I'm no longer able to maintain the mantle of symbol of peace, and I doubt anyone will be able to pick up where I left off. They will need someone to bring them hope during those dark times. I want you to be that symbol. Izumi's eyes widened. All Might didn't want her to replace him as the symbol of peace, but become a different symbol, a symbol of hope. Practically they were the same thing, but to the public they were different. After All Might retires, the world won't need peace, but hope. Hope for a better, brighter future. It will take time. You can't become a symbol like that overnight. She would need to get stronger if she is to take up this mantle. But take it up she will. All Might had entrusted this to her, and she would not let him down. I'll try not to let you down, All Might, Izumi said. Oh, there's something I want to talk to you about. About One for All. Oh, All Might said, is everything alright? I don't know, Izumi replied. It's gotten messy. Last night I wouldn't call it a dream, more like a vision. I think I saw the birth of One for All. All Might coughed up blood. You what? He gagged. What did you see, exactly? Well, I was in a dark void, but my body wasn't fully there, only the top of my head and right arm, Izumi explained, shuddering slightly. There was a line of 7 people beside me, one of them I think was you. But you were glowing a bright yellow and looked like you were on fire. They were all watching a memory of sorts, of 2 people. I don't remember much of what was said, but I remember what they did. One of them had the power to take and give quirks, and he forced a quirk upon the other man. All Might lay there in shock as he listened to Izumi's story. All for One, he whispered. Who? Izumi asked, looking confused. That man you saw, the one who could give and take quirks, was named All for One. All Might explained he went by the name of his quirk, so I don't know his real name. But he had a brother who he thought was Quirkless. That was, until All for One forced a quirk upon him, revealing that he did have a quirk, one that could be passed on to others. The brother's quirk was useless on its own, but after he was given another quirk, Power Stockpile, the two quirks merged and formed One for All. The younger brother, knowing that he could not use this power to defeat All for One, passed it on to someone else, so that they could grow One for All. And it kept on growing with each new bearer in the hopes that it'll be strong enough to one day defeat All for 1 inch. Which you managed to do, Izumi said quietly. So, he's gone, right? All Might nodded. He's dead. I made sure of that. A look of shock slowly formed on Izumi's face. You killed him? All Might frowned. Yes. Yes, I did. We both went into that battle knowing that only one of us would be coming out of it alive. I killed him, but you saw what he did to me in turn, he said, pointing to his wound. Trust me, you won't have to worry about him. Just focus on getting stronger. Izumi, didn't you theorize that One for All might have a sister quirk? Durandal asked. What? All Might asked, looking confused. Well, when I was coming up with a name for my quirk, I thought that, maybe, I could call it All for One, Izumi said. Getting a worried look from All Might, I decided against it, but then remembered the quote from the Three Musketeers, One for All and All for One. So it got me thinking that it may have a sibling quirk. Guess I was right. All Might smiled. You're a smart girl, Izumi. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Izumi beamed at the praise. Thank you, All Might. No problem, All Might said. So, you said that you saw the previous users of One for All. You wouldn't know what they looked like? Izumi nodded before she got out a notebook and passed it to him. This contains rough sketches of both you and 6 of the other users, plus All for One. There was another one there, but all I could see of him was a black mass of smoke, she said. All Might took the notebook and started looking through it. He recognized All for One a mile off, even from the quick sketch of him Izumi had made. But there was another sketch he recognized, the sketch of his mentor and the one who passed One for All to him. Nana? You know one of them? Izumi asked, realizing that this was probably a pointless question since he had to have known one of them, since one of them had to have passed One for All to him. Yes, Nana Shimura, All Might said with a smile, a single tear falling from his eye. She was my mentor alongside Gran Torino, he said before he lowered his head in shame. She was the only one who believed I could become a hero. I am so sorry, Izumi. For what I said to you back then on that roof. I should have been better than that and acted more like Nana would have acted. Ha? Izumi said, tilting her head to the side in confusion. She didn't know what All Might was talking about. Durandal on the other hand did, and he wasn't happy. You hypocritical arsehole, Durandal chided. What? Izumi asked, looking even more confused. All Might sighed. The day I first met Nana was also the day I tried to end my life. Izumi's eyes shot wide open. All Might tried to end his own life? No, that can't be true. Yo, you're stronger than that. I'm afraid it is, All Might said. I wasn't always All Might, you know, and even the strongest of men have their moments of weakness. I was going through a rough time. Back then I didn't have One for All, I was quirkless, like you. I always wanted to become a hero, but even back then, no one believed that I could do it without a quirk. One day it was just too much for me to bear, so I walked up to the top of the highest building I could find and jumped. I only survived because Nana was there to save me. She was the first person to believe that I could be a hero, he said, and then, when I was presented with the exact same situation, I did the opposite of what she had done. I am so sorry for what I said that day, Izumi. I had lost faith in myself back then and did not think someone could become a hero without a quirk, despite not being born with one myself. I had forgotten that I was once quirkless, and my own hypocrisy almost cost you your life. Tears started to fall from Izumi's eyes. All Might was once like her, a useless, quirkless Deku. But, when he asked if he could be a hero, he was told yes. The exact opposite he told her. I know you might never forgive me for my actions that day, and I understand that. All Might continued. I still haven't forgiven myself for what I said to you. Even if you had refused to take one for all, I still would have trained you for UA. I owed you that much at least. I should have told you this before, but my shame of how I handled it was too much, and I did not wish to hurt you any more than I already had. You really screwed that up, All Might, Durandal said. If word of that ever got out, your reputation would take a nosedive. Yes, I know, All Might said, especially since I said in an interview that anyone could become a hero. Are you okay, Izumi? Izumi wiped the tears away from her eyes. It hurt that All Might asked the same thing she did, and got a yes, but unlike everyone else who she asked that to, he was the only one to apologize and try to make amends. It's okay, she said quietly. It just came as a surprise that you were like me once. It's painful, yes, but you've more than made up for it since then. You helped me get into UA when no one else wanted to support me. For that, I am thankful for it. But, after hearing your story, I am angry at you for not seeing potential in me the first time, like Nana did for you, she said, but I won't stop because of it. I've already gotten this far, and I'm not turning back now. All Might nodded. I know, and I don't expect you to forgive me for that anytime soon, but I am glad that you still want to be my successor, he said with a smile. On another note, due to my significantly reduced time, I've decided to introduce Toshinori to the other students. I can't be All Might all the time, sadly, so I'm going to have to spend time in my weaker form around them. So, from now on, call me that when I look like this, okay? Toshinori? Izumi said, looking slightly confused. Oh, isn't that what Gran Torino called you? She asked. Yes, he did, Toshinori said with a shiver, still remembering the lesson on teaching the man had given him. It was rather painful. It's my name. Mirai may have called me that as well as a few times around you. I thought you noticed. Oh, sorry. I was probably busy at the time, Izumi said with a nervous smile. She would have to apologize to the man later. She couldn't do it now since he was busy with an investigation, so she decided to send him a message later. Well, you were busy training, Toshinori said. Anyway, you should get going. Visiting hours are almost over. Of course, Izumi said before she stood up. I'll talk to you later, Toshinori, she said before she turned and walked out of the room. Well, I'm glad that's over. Still slapping him in the face once he gets in here, a female voice said. Once again Izumi looked around for the source, but there was no one around, apart from Durandal. You okay? Durandal asked. I'm fine, Izumi replied. The voices were probably due to stress or something, nothing to worry Toshinori with. Let's go back to the others, she said before they made their way back towards the ward her classmates were in. Hopefully, they wouldn't have to go through something like that again. Nizu smiled as he sat upon the shoulder of Shota Aizawa as the latter walked through the hospital. The erasure hero looked a lot more tired than usual, with good reason. He, as well as most of the staff, had been busy ever since the attack on the USJ. Losing 13 had been painful, and having to find a replacement for her so soon after her death hurt even more. They needed time to grieve, time they did not have. Horiguramo had managed to find a few candidates already. She worked fast after all. Some would say too fast, but the sooner you get something done, the better. He just wished it wasn't for something as terrible as this. But he trusted Horiguramo on this matter. She was the vice principal of UA after all. He wouldn't have hired her if he couldn't trust her. So, whilst she was busy with that, he was busy with something else, which allowed him to deal with this little thing. He had just come off a call with Gran Torino, and he would say that it went better than expected. He hated having to make calls like that, but he needed allies for what was to come. Shota walked over to one of the private rooms and walked inside. Inside the room, laying on the medical bed, was one of the 3 villains to survive the USJ. The bunny girl villain. Nizu smiled as they entered. Good evening, my dear. How has your recovery been going? He asked with a smile. The bunny girl villain turned slightly to look at him. It's going well. I should be able to walk in a few days. So, what did I do to deserve a visit from the principal of UA? I'm pretty sure I'm not even remotely on the list of people you should visit, seeing that I was involved in the USJ attack. Oh, just checking in on those who helped keep my students alive during the attack, Nizu said with a smile. Or are you denying that you helped them fight that Strider? I'm not denying it, the bunny girl villain said, but I don't see the reason why you would want to visit me. Once I'm healed, it's straight off to prison for me. I'm just surprised I'm not going to Tartarus, she said, noting how Nizu seemed to be laughing. What's so funny? Oh, I'm sorry, Nizu said with an unnerving smile. I just found what you said about being arrested funny. After all, why would the police arrest a corpse? What? Yes. Unfortunately, you died from your injuries en route to the hospital, Nizu said, still smiling. So sorry for your loss. What? It's such a shame you died. There was so much I wanted to ask you, Nizu continued. What? Oh please, why are you finding this so hard to understand? Nizu asked, still smiling. According to official police reports, which have not been tampered with in any way, shape, or form, the only survivors from the USJ were the 21 hero course students, 2 teachers, and All Might himself, with 2 villains escaping before they could be captured. He explained. You were sadly not among the list of the living. But, since you're dead, you're going to need some things, he said before Shoto walked over to her and gave her a folder. The bunny girl villain giddily took the folder and opened it. Her eyes widened in shock as she looked through its contents, struggling to believe what she was reading. Why are you doing this for me? She asked, looking back up at Nizu with tears in her eyes. What did I do to deserve this? Nizu looked at her with a frown. War is coming. The leaders of the League of Villains are still out there, as well as whoever created that thing they called Nomu. Paxton's minions are once again on the move and are working together. Powerful forces are on the move and they will no doubt be getting stronger. I need all the help I can get to protect my students and prepare them for what is to come, he said before he looked back up at her and smiled. You have shown a willingness to protect those around you, even going as far as you allow yourself to be injured instead of them. And, I am a firm believer that everyone, no matter how evil they are, deserves a second chance. So, what do you say? Do you want a second chance? That will be it for this part. I hope everyone enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and comment if you want part 19. If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. I hope to see you all in the next one.